Released both on Disney Plus as well as in cinemas, we finally have our very first Marvel Phase 4 movie. Hey guys, welcome back to Ad Lib Talk, and this is my review for Black Widow. Natasha is back, surprise surprise, after we saw her, spoilers for Avengers Endgame obviously. There we go. So anyone who hasn't watched Avengers Endgame has left by now, right? Yeah. Sacrifice herself in Endgame. This movie has seen never-ending delays. So, can its quality hold up? But before we start with this review, as always, don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, and do please consider subscribing if you still have not, as those are the two main ways you can help support my channel here. Cheers, and let's get right into that review. Okay, so our movie starts off with a flashback back to 1995 as Russian undercover agents Alexei Shostakov and Melina Vostokov have created this sort of facade of a family in Ohio with two kind of like fake daughters, I guess, Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova. After managing to steal some intel from S.H.I.E.L.D., they escape to Cuba, and the two girls are taken to the Red Room for training against their will. This takes us now back to 2016, where Romanoff is on the run for violating the Sokovia Accords. She escapes to Norway, aided by her friend. In the meantime, we also get to see Belova saved from the mind control kind of chemicals she had through this sort of antidote, and thus together with her sister, well, not really her sister, but I guess her sort of like fake sister, I guess, attempt to rid the world from Dreykov and save the rest of the Black Widows. Dreykov obviously being the guy who is mind controlling the Black Widows. Now, that is the sort of basic idea of what happens in this movie without spoiling too much. I personally was quite excited for this movie for a number of reasons. I was looking forward to seeing director Kate Shortland's take on the Black Widow character, a somewhat kind of forgotten member of the Avengers team. Would she turn this into a kind of like Captain America type movie, or would it be more of a spy action movie similar to something sort of like Jason Bourne, for example? And honestly, it's a bit of both. The movie starts off in a rather low-key manner, and I was personally quite impressed by how sort of understated it all was. And I really have to say I enjoyed the first part of this movie. For example, seeing Natasha's undercover false parents escape from Ohio in a plane, it was a very pleasant action scene to see. All understated, nothing too big, just a fun and well-shot action scene. I was looking forward to seeing more of this throughout the whole movie. Unfortunately, this is not completely a grounded spy action movie with a bit of family drama. That's what I wanted. We get that up to 2/3 of the way of this movie. And up to 2/3 of the way of this movie, as I said, I was really enjoying it. Let's focus on the positives first, and then I'll talk about the negatives later on. So, the performances. I thought both David Harbour and Florence Pugh were impressive in this movie. Harbour was hilarious. He really was in his take as the Red Guardian. A lot of his humor worked, and I really enjoyed the relationship that kind of developed between the two, himself and Yelena, of course. Florence Pugh as Yelena was also especially impressive, as hers was the only character who got some kind of sort of emotional response out of me throughout this whole movie. This was clear to see in the dinner scene, for example, where we see Yelena, Natasha, Alexei, and Melina all sit around the table and talk about both their past and their present. Florence Pugh's acting during that scene was excellent, and you could see the pain in her eyes after all she has been through. If that was not enough, she also has some incredibly hilarious moments and showcases great ability to deliver her lines in extremely sarcastic ways. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Yelena in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and hope she will get a central role in the many movies left to come in Phase 4. What about our two killer stars, Scarlett Johansson and Rachel Weisz? Well, Rachel Weisz is fine. She does an okay job. And to be honest, nothing too impressive, I think. it was an okay performance. I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. On the other hand, I wouldn't say Johansson is bad in this movie. She just seems to be going through the motions here. This is definitely no marriage story for her, mind you. She is kind of overshadowed by Pugh in her own movie. And this may have been done deliberately, mind you, to pave a way for Yelena as the next Avenger. And can also be blamed on the material Johansson has to work with here. Yelena's character is emotional and allows Pugh much more sort of leeway than Johansson, who has to deal with a character who is closed off and almost completely unemotional, at least in what we got in this movie. Blame it on the writing, blame it on a flat performance, or maybe blame it on the character itself. Now, what about the action? It's good, sometimes it's really good, but surprisingly enough, they were never my favorite moments of this movie. I would much rather see Florence Pugh and David Harbour's interactions as they play off each other's character with a nice combination of both humor and drama. The action is not bad, mind you. It was spectacular at times, mind-numbing at others, but overall it gets the job done. It's just when you've got this kind of talent on screen, you don't really need all those spectacular over-the-top CGI action sequences. You can keep everything a little low-key, and I think it would have worked much better for what they have here. Now let's move on to the negatives. The antagonists are extremely weak, really boring, uninteresting. We have two main antagonists here. First of all, the Taskmaster, who looks cool but doesn't really do anything in this movie, and we don't even get a satisfying background story. It's all quite sad that she's not involved in any of the action sequences, any of the best action sequences we have in this movie, which I will be talking about in a bit. Then we have Dreykov, acted by Winstone. His is the most boring of antagonists they could have thought of, honestly, and his performance really doesn't help here. There is obvious commentary being made here, right? Which I don't think I really need to explain. Nonetheless, it's boring and unimaginative. Finally, the CGI effects were weird, very weird at times, very weak CGI at many moments. There was one scene where Scarlett Johansson jumps off this kind of plane, and you could tell the CGI was awful in that scene. Some very bad CGI, which is surprising because this is, I mean, it's a Marvel movie, right? I would imagine they have quite a big budget for that kind of stuff. Now, overall, director Kate Shortland did a decent job in creating an interesting superhero movie. I know that most of the criticisms cannot probably be blamed on her, as it is well known that many of these action sequences are imposed on directors, and it's not really up to them whether to include them or not. Now, the character drama here works, mostly due to the great talent we have in front of the camera, with both Florence Pugh and David Harbour giving us great performances. The small-scale action sequences also worked really well. Like I said, the escape scene from Ohio was one very good action scene, but we also, for example, I really enjoyed the Natasha fight with the other Black Widows in the Red Room. That was a very well shot scene, with some very well choreographed action. Apart from that, I mean, you have a lot of big budget CGI action that is mostly mind-numbing and rather drab performances by the rest of the cast, especially Rachel Weisz and Scarlett Johansson. Overall, listen, it's a decent attempt, and Black Widow, in my opinion, deserves a 3 out of 5. And my recommendation only for those who really enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And even then, overall, this movie is quite insignificant in the grand scheme of things, apart from introducing Yelena as the next sort of Avenger. So it's not like you're missing out on anything too important if you don't watch this movie. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that review. If you did, don't forget to leave a like on this video, and please do consider subscribing. Cheers, and I'll see you guys next time right here on Adlib Talk.